Delve Deep by Rote Writer. Chapter 71 Amsterdam. Blindly boarding a train bound for who knows where, he finds it's heading to Amsterdam after the fellow asking for tickets tells him so. So from France, he passes through the Belgian border not bothered by any custom agents or the like. It's as if the two countries are in all ways, save for name and culture, the same. Rote imagines an early Europe like in North America before the Europeans come. The Celtic tribes are all intertwined like the Patisserie and Belgique. The train pulls into bilingual Brussels, the capital of Belgium, a country in between France and the Netherlands along the North Sea. It shares both their languages and history. The train temporarily stops, allowing travelers on and off. Rote sees through the train window a view of the architecture. While looking at the Gothic city hall hovering over the Grand Place, he imagines medieval open markets taking place. He would like to step off the train to see, but it's not to be. The train travels through into the Netherlands. He's surprised to see no customs at the Belgium-Netherlands border either. It seems travel and trade trumps all. Now Europe is entrenched with the European Union and Euro. Europe is one entity, respecting many cultures. The train passes through the western part of the Holland near the North Sea into The Hague. It continues through and into another major port city, Rotterdam. Rote's a bit remiss again, for the train rolls out before there's a chance to blink, let alone think upon its history. When he looks back, he understands why Rotterdam is one of the world's largest ports. The Dutch East India Company places ports all over the globe soon after realizing the world isn't flat. Their home port has to be preeminent. Rote rides the train through Haarlem into Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands. He knows New York is once New Amsterdam. The Haarlem name still remains as a borough. Rote knows the Dutch are once one of the world's greatest seafarers. The father of the family who adopts him is Dutch, half Indonesian. Indonesia is colonized by the Dutch. His adoptive father always wants to be a merchant marine, captain of ship. He ends up on a Dutch warship back in World War II, sailing to defend the Dutch East Indies. That doesn't go so well. He spends 3.5 years as a prisoner of war, enslaved in concentration camps under the Japanese. Japanese officers utilize Korean guards. He's beaten, tortured, and starved to the point where teeth start falling out. A shrill scream in the dead of night many years later is heard often within the house Rote lives in growing up. No one says anything. After the atomic bomb, he's liberated thanks to forces under General MacArthur and the Americans and Admiral Mountbatten and the British. After finding family members who survived and suffered as dearly during the war, he returns to Holland. He immigrates from Holland and becomes Canadian. He marries a Canadian woman with English and Scottish ancestry. They have 5 children of their own before adopting Rote, ripped the recurring nightmare. Rote's 7 going on 8 when a black and white photo in a newspaper is seen. He's wild with a black eye. There's a column, Wednesday's child. He's a child of woe. Rote's born a bastard and spends the first 8 years of his life as a foster child, in and out of foster homes, hospitals, hallways, and halfway stays. He has a nervous breakdown in his early 20s. All his bad memories from childhood break him. He's hospitalized. They have no idea what's wrong with him, so they test him with every psychiatric drug ever designed. Nothing works the way the prescription says it will. Each pill has an ill effect. Finally, they force consent to have electroconvulsive therapy or shock treatment. They schedule him for 6, but by the 5th, he's adapted to the anesthesia. It has no effect, save for paralyzing him, preventing him from speaking. All he can do is look into the eyes of the doctor. Strapped in, his jaw locks, his teeth bite down deep into the protective bit as he feels the searing heat enter through his 2 temples. He can smell something surfacing through his nasal passage. It isn't a pleasant scent. It smells like singed hair. Feels like a Martian for many months afterwards. His mind and memory are history. After a deep, dark depression, he throws away his ID and becomes homeless. He's hoping to be just another John Doe after hanging himself. That doesn't work out. Hopelessly winding up homeless, again and again, he begins to write as a way to remember. It works. He works on his writing, hoping to lessen the chances of wondering how he ends up homeless. Rote writes by listening to words play in his mind, like musical notes. He relies on the rhythm and rhyme, tone, tempo, and alliteration all help him to remember. The sound found in his mind moves his memory to fill in the story. He knows he'll be writing about all of this one day, too, but not today. He's unable to keep a journal or take notes. Meanwhile, his long-term memory makes up for what his short-term lacks. He can keep track, though often falls between the cracks. He knows momentum, for he swings on it like a pendulum from place to place. The first place Rote leaves from is in Amsterdam is Central Station. He's downtown. He sees hordes of tourists. One person approaches, accosts him, then tries to sell a room in some house. Rote will look back in hindsight, wishing he took the room. For now, he'll hike to the nearest hostel, having learned of its location from the same fellow telling him there's no vacancies anywhere in Amsterdam. Rote learns earlier from a breeze through a Lonely Planet guidebook about Amsterdam. It has 50 miles of canals separating the city into 70 islands, all connected by 500 bridges. Amsterdam has an appropriate moniker as the Venice of the North. The first thing Rote notices is how the English language and the Dutch language seem to share the same words, like central and centraal, street and straat. Like a pack mule with a heavy haul, he heads to a hostel, asking for directions along the way. The crowds of people clutter his path as the weary and worn wanderer weaves his way to the hostel. As soon as he's inside the hostel, he realizes it's completely booked and will be for a few more weeks. If a hostel is booked, then surely all the affordable rooms in Amsterdam are also booked. The hosteler can see Rote's look of loss and suggests he might want to come back the following morning between 10 and 11. There might be a chance someone may check out. There'll be others in his situation also vying for a bed. With an all-night outdoor adventure in store, Rote asks the hosteler where he can leave his backpack. He lets him know Central Station has lockers. Rote hikes back to Central Station. He finds the locker and starts wedging his backpack into it. While doing so, he notices a guy bouncing around like a pinball, asking people for donations. He does so after he shows them how the lockers work. Without asking, he expects a euro or so is in store after showing someone how they lock. Rote's too tired to argue and too tried to be tested. He walks away without giving him any change, though he'll see him in the following day and give him a euro. How guilt makes him do that, he'll never know. Maybe because he's done it to others, though. Rote just flat out begs. Now free of his backpack, he can roam the streets of Amsterdam the whole night, unfettered. Rote heads out of Central Station, back to the tourist-friendly downtown core of Amsterdam. The central core of Amsterdam is purely for pedestrians. No cars, just a maze of alley-like streets. What a wonderful thing. Rote immediately goes into the first cafe displaying an internet station. It sells hash and pot with the choices presented on a menu. Rote isn't much of a smoker, but when in Rome, he buys 2 grams of the house blend of hash and pot because he can buy it legally and buy the novelty of it. Rote pulls up a chair to one of the computers and is soon stoned. He emails some friends back home in the momentary euphoria of being in Amsterdam legally stoned. After a few hours of trying to finish one complete sentence while sitting there, he wonders if any readable emails are ever even sent. He rolls another joint and smokes it before being ushered out. It's closing time. He's baked. He's not sure where he is, save for being in Amsterdam. He leaves wondering if he'll remember where he just was. There's so many cafes. The only difference is some are coffee houses and the other are coffee shops. He's not sure if the shops or the house is selling drugs. Out in the dimly lit alleys, he walks with munchies. He must find food. Rote, like a mouse in a maze, walks in a haze of hash and pot through pedestrian alleys. He has no idea if he's walking in circles. All the little alley-like strats seem to converge into a core in the center of Amsterdam. But even as he is, he still manages to find a McDonald's. Upon entering, Rote realizes the need to relieve himself. He walks down the stairs to the washroom, only to be immediately confronted by a fellow sitting at a bare table. The doorman to the toilet demands 50 cents. Rote just ignores it as a lark, proceeds into the washroom to do his business. When he comes back out, the washroom attendant pains him again, saying something about not paying for using it. Rote's in disbelief. It's McDonald's. Never in his life has he ever paid to use their washrooms. And here's a fellow fighting mad to make him do so. Through Rote's stoned eyes, he can see he's a short, sturdy fellow, obviously not from Europe. Speaks English well enough, as everyone in Amsterdam seems to. He's really serious. It's his job, after all. He stands so close to Rote and asks him again, only more aggressively. Rote's not having any of this. McDonald's is one of the richest corporations in the world, and now they're charging customers to use the washroom? No way. Rote may be stoned, but he's not stupid enough to hand over money, no matter how menial the fee, to pay to take a pee. They stand there eye to eye. Neither budges nor blinks. Rote's so stoned he can barely see. His eyelids are so heavy. Every time he blinks, he has to think again to open them. The standoff is suddenly sidetracked when another patron comes down to take a pee. He too is aggressively affronted for a fee to take a pee. He responds almost as incredulously as Rote does. But he doesn't dare enter the washroom. Thankfully, Rote does. He would be exploding by now. The three of them stand silently staring until one of them breaks. Not Rote. No way is he going to give in. The other says with an Australian accent, "Look, I'll go upstairs and get some money from one of my friends at my table." As soon as he heads upstairs, Rote takes a momentary diversion to pass up the stairs as well. Rote's really riled. He immediately goes to the front counter and demands to see the manager. The manager comes to the counter. Rote lets him know. "Do you know there's someone downstairs charging people money to take a pee?" "No." "You mean you don't?" The manager can tell how angry Rote is with his red eyes and his lids being so lazy-like when he smokes. He must think Rote's crazy. He looks at him. The manager goes downstairs and scolds the foreign fellow for show. Rote follows. So does the fellow from Australia. The man just doing his job almost attacks Rote after being so summarily scolded. He tries to reach for Rote. The manager, being in between the two, stops it from happening. The Australian, who adds his own displeasure for being bothered to take a pee, says to Rote afterwards, "That guy down there still wants to kill you." Rote, after hearing this, goes right back down to the washrooms. He approaches him. He puts his arm around him and says, almost in a parental way, "It's wrong to demand something like you did. It's dangerous. And even if you think you're in the right, matters of money aren't worth a fight. Stand for what's right and not for the greed of others." Rote understands that the fellow is from a foreign land and is only doing what the manager of McDonald's is paying him to do. And although Rote knows this, he's so stoned that he feels almost philosophical about the whole matter. He just wants the fellow to know how he feels about it, and all. He doesn't know for sure if his message is heard. He shakes the fellow's hand and leaves after taking another pee without paying the 50 cent fee. Back up at the counter, Rote orders another Big Mac. He gobbles down the two corrugated cardboard-like meat patties, soaked in special sauce, squeezed in between a sesame seed bun. He thinks about ordering another. He does, but leaves with it while trying to digest the two already in him. He makes his way back to the maze of pedestrian alleys. Everyone seems stoned to him, and he senses maybe being a little more careful might be the call of the night. After all, he's in a foreign city, stoned, without shelter, or any bearing where he is, or where he is walking. Thinks taking some aid might be a good idea. Just left one dangerous situation. Maybe another one is waiting around the corner of a dimly lit alley. Rote saunters from one strat to another. He stops only long enough to wolf down his third Big Mac. He starts to stretch the circumference of the city, widening his circle while crossing bridges, curving over canals. Comes out of the central core of the city where the canals become as prevalent as strats. Rote has some idea somewhere there's a red light district, and he wants to check it out. He has images embedded in his mind, like so many historical sites and scenes seen both famous and infamous. And the red light district of Amsterdam is no exception. He's seen documentaries on the district. He will sniff out the district like a dog that knows his way home. Rote winds in and out of every section of Amsterdam, all highlighted by the many arched bridges crossing over the canals. Down the back strats he ambles until he finds the red light district by happenstance. It's something to see stoned as he is. He's amused by it all, the potential Johns goggling through the red curtain-lined windows with a wide range of prostitutes. They're showing off their wares like a fashion show. selling their sex appeal from behind their respective windows. Rote thinks, gee, it must be a bit daunting for Johns to climb up the flight of stairs. It's thousands upon thousands of tourists walking by, knowing exactly what they're up to. Obviously, sex supersedes shame in that scene. For the woman of the night presumably get their fair share of it. Rote walks the 2 or 3 block radius of the red light district and goes back towards what he hopes is the direction of Central Station. It's already his beacon in Amsterdam. It's really late, well into the wee hours of the morning when only the others are active, and there are many still out there looking to harm half-witted tourists. Rote keeps his wits low. He seems more amazed than anything at the way the canals cross like a grid crisscrossing the entire city. A map will be necessary. He'll forget soon enough most of where he's been or how he got there. Amsterdam's canals, bridged by beautiful bridges and strats, twist and turn in and out of every block. Rote finds his way back to Central Station. It's still locked, though there are vending machines out in front of it. One of them sells maps. He purchases one for €2. He heads back to one of the bigger bridges, crossing what he believes is the Amstel, the main waterway to the North Sea. The bridge has 2 main pillars holding it up with stairwells leading below. He takes one stairwell down to the platform halfway below the arch and above the canal. He's followed, accosted for cash, and left alone. He checks his map to see where he is. And there you can see a luminous green facade reflect on an ambient Amstel. While there, he keeps warm, trying to figure out what to do. He has an idea after mulling over the map where there might be a campground. It's about the same distance from the central part of Amsterdam as the campground Bois de Boulogne is from Paris proper.